Okay, everyone, today's video is I'm going to call it a fan question. I recently saw the comment that said something to the effect of, what do we need to take into consideration on buying or selling houses where a crime has happened? And I thought, well, that's a pretty good question. Let's jump into that. So I'm going to break it down both from a selling and a buying perspective, just so you guys kind of have the rough lay of the land there. As we get into it, if you guys do need real estate help at any point in your life, 1911syndicate.com is where I would recommend that you go. That is where he goes when he needs to buy a home or an investment property with all of his funds or anything like that. So you can check that out. We would appreciate it. Here's the first thing. I'm going to tell you this from a real estate agent perspective, which is the following may vary state by state, but based on my state of Utah, where I'm coming to you from, you do not have to disclose that a crime has happened in a home. Okay, you don't have to advertise that fact. If asked about it, right, if a buyer walks through and, for whatever reason, they're aware that, oh, some dude got smoked in this house, and they ask it that way, they're like, hey, did some dude get smoked in this house? I, as the agent, have to be like, yes, he did. So I cannot lie about it when asked, but I do not have to advertise that fact. Okay, that's how the system works. So what are some considerations you should make if you are selling a home where a crime has occurred? One, what kind of crime you doing in your home there, fella? You know what I mean? Like, you killing people in the basement, or did you get busted with a joint? Different levels of crime. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You are not in a power position, and two things. You're going to probably take whatever offer comes to you. If you're of sound mind, you're probably going to realize you're not in a power position, and you're going to pretty much get stuck taking whatever you can get for the house, unless you want to keep it forever, but that does not change the fact that it is a crime house. Number two, it's probably going to take a little bit longer to sell it. Those are the big two considerations, right? It's going to take a little bit longer, chances are, and you're probably going to get a little bit less for your house than you would if bad things didn't happen in your house. I almost wound up on the receiving end of this. So I got a call, and they said, well, kind of a unique one here. And I was like, okay. And they basically said, here's the Cliff Notes version of the story. It was a home here in Salt Lake, and I was not aware of this story, but allegedly there was a party at this house, and the dudes there and a couple like 18-year-olds or something who were at the party, like, take a bottle of booze or something like that and run out of the house, get in their car in the driveway, just kids doing stupid kid shit. And the dude walks up to the car, shoots one of them point blank, kills them, and then takes a hostage. And this winds up in a SWAT team standoff, and I don't remember if they wound up smoking that dude or not, but clearly a criminal. So I got the call to sell that house where the standoff happened, and I didn't know how I felt about it. I didn't, I wasn't selling it for the dude that did the killing. I was selling it for his family, who's now trying to deal with this house that they basically have to deal with when the dude's in jail. But I probably would have done it. Eventually, it didn't wind up happening, which I was also not super bummed about. But I was going, this is probably the first time in my life where I might do an open house in a plate carrier. I might have body armor on when I do this when I do this thing, just because I don't know who else is coming to this house. We'll see. So I'm probably going to be kind of kitted up for this open house. Didn't wind up happening, but it's neither here nor there. Considerations if you are looking at buying a house where a crime has happened. So I would do this. Oftentimes, unfortunately, you're probably not even going to know that this is a house that does have some sort of criminal record. So an example of that, in my point here is I would try to, if possible, do a little bit of research into any criminal record that house may have. So long story short of it, we're under contract on a house, me and a veteran client or active duty military client here in Utah, and we go to it was a new garage, and it said in the seller's disclosures, garage was in a fire, and it was rebuilt like a year ago or whatever. And you're like, okay, cool. So we go to the inspection the day of, and there's 2x4s over the garage door that had been kicked in. So I call the agent and I'm like, yo, what is up with this? Maybe a heads up would be nice so I don't look like a total chump to my client here showing up to this. And he was like, oh, yeah, so my client gets suspicious and he starts looking into it, placing some calls inside of the, community. And basically this was a known drug house. The fire in the garage was probably from a meth fire because the house also wound up popping hot for meth. You guessed it. So, point being to this, if you have any inkling that a crime has happened in a home, I would try to pull up the history of that home, especially inside of police records, to try to attempt to see, look, was this a one-time crime, okay, or was this a criminal house? Because those are really different things, right? If you go, hey, this just happened to be a place where this sort of isolated incident happened. It may or may not have even been that bad, but it technically was a crime, but it was a one-off. Versus this was a known like drug dealer's house, or this was like some gang member's house or something like that. That's a different story, because at that point, within the community of thugs, that house is now known as a place that you can go and get drugs or whatever the thing may be. So at that point, personally, I would go, that's a little too hot for my comfort level. I personally am out because I don't want to deal with the potential residual effects of this criminal house. If it was a one-time thing, and it was a one-off, I don't even know what that one-off would really be, right? I don't even really have a good example for you. But you go, look, that was kind of a one-and-done criminal situation there. I'm comfortable with it. Then go for it. That's up to you. I think a large part of it is going to depend on what your comfort level is, and also, do you have a family dynamic? Because if you're going, oh, we've got twins and they're 3 years old and they're sweet little children, and this is a known, meth house, and it was a hookers and blow kind of house. You go, I don't know, might be a little too dicey for the twins. So that's your call, right? I don't really judge it either way. I'm just saying, maybe look into it. I guess the upside of buying a house that has a criminal record is you probably get a relatively decent deal on it, because, as I said, when selling one, you're probably going to kind of get stuck taking whatever you can get. So look, there's a little bit of pros here, largely cons, but it's going to be up to you whether or not that works for you. So that's it, guys. If you enjoy anything you see here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about real estate, feel free to drop them down below. I try to keep these relatively straightforward and communicate about real estate in a way that we can all understand, because real estate is a very pretentious industry that everyone wants to be the smartest guy in the room. And it's not necessary, because it's not actually that difficult to figure out. So anyway, hope you guys are doing well. We'll see you next time.